So Gaurav, to start with, we would love to hear, about your remarkable entrepreneurial journey filled with kind of, highs and lows. It will be great if you can just please walk us through your journey, uh, with some critical milestones along the way and experiences you encountered while building the Tata 1MG.
Yeah, we started Tata 1MG is it's been what, almost a 10-year-old journey, and the journey of 1MG actually started you know before as a small experiment in our previous company, HealthCart. So, as you had already mentioned, I graduated from IT Delhi, spent a lot of time in the Bay Area, and then moved back to India in 2014 as the CTO of HealthCart. And in HealthCart, we had this small experiment on the side, which was to essentially build, content platform for medicines. And I'll take a minute to just talk about it because it's such a fascinating thing, which is very unique to India. So, across the world, we have medicine that has just discovered maybe 3,000, 3,500 odd, drugs that we use to treat patients. In India, though, you don't have 3,500 medicines. You actually have maybe 2 lakh medicines. And the reason that is because India is, the branded generic capital of the world. We manufacture medicines. As we know, we have a really strong pharma industry. We manufacture medicines for everyone. But unlike the West, where let's say you have generic medicines which are off patent, and then you have some branded medicines, etc., which are usually on patent, etc. India has 50, 100, at times even more than 100 brands for every medicine that's made out there, right? So because it's very easy to manufacture and slap a brand name on a medicine. And what's even more interesting is that doctors write brands, and there are some fairly legitimate reasons for doctors to write brands, because to some extent brand ensures quality of manufacturing in a medicine. And then retailers or pharmacies are expected to dispense brands, right? And so what we saw was that um, patients were given brands, and they were confused. What does this medicine do, and is this the same as this other medicine? Because even though the brands are different, the underlying molecule is the same and it works the same way. Oftentimes there's a price difference, etc. So in the true spirit of the internet, which is how do you bring equality through by ending, let's say, information asymmetry, right? How do you give everyone the same information? We built a small engine on the side, which was called HealthCart Plus at the time. And Plus was because, HealthCart was about nutrition. So Plus was around, medication or healthcare. We wanted to sort of build a company which went all the way from nutrition to, let's say, taking care of sick patients as well. And uh, again, this is 2013, maybe even before my time in India, 13, 14. The interface for this app was very, very simplistic. It was just a search box like Google. You entered the name of the medicine, and we basically showed you all the information. And it was, we didn't know what it will do. We didn't know if people needed this information, but this application or this website, HealthCart Plus, continued to beat all our expectations, in the sense that this is early days of the app ecosystem in India. It was one of the most downloaded apps in the ecosystem, right? And it was all word of mouth downloaded. And what we realized was that there was a huge latent need for information around medicines. And we later realized that it was because there was a lot of brand proliferation, right? Too many brands existed, people were confused. And the second reason was that when doctors wrote prescriptions and when medicines were given to patients, nobody explained, unlike, let's say, the Western ecosystem, okay, this is how you're supposed to take it. These are the side effects that you can expect. Should you take it with food? Should you take it after food, etc.? Right? A lot of these small, minor details were missed. How do you deal with the side effect? And that's the core gap that 1MG filled, right? And in 2014, we discussed and we decided that 1MG needs to have its own life, because it was an idea which was just extremely powerful, the amount of customers that we had. And so Prashant and I decided to step out of HealthCart and actually create this new company, which was 1MG, and then take it from there. Now, when we were creating 1MG, again, we were very clear, and I think more than anything, Prashant was very clear, because he'd spent a lot of time in the healthcare ecosystem in India and the US as well, was that when a patient is sick, they don't need medicines or diagnostic tests or a doctor consultation. They need all of it together, right? So, and that formed the basis of integrated our vision of being integrated healthcare platform. We also realized that as consumers, in the healthcare ecosystem, right? So there are three pillars in the healthcare ecosystem. There's the doctor, there's the payer or the insurance company, and then there's the patient, right? And we felt that the ecosystems across the world always optimized for the provider or the payer, and almost never for the patient, right? So the patient was considered to be this guy who was just receiving maybe some charity, because they were being treated, right? And we felt it was really important for some company, healthcare company, to put the patient at the center of the healthcare universe, and be empathetic, provide empathetic, quality, affordable care, right? So that became the second pillar for 1mg. And the third was that we felt that for a patient to get better, he or she really needed three things, right? One is education, the second is affordability, and the third is accessibility, right? Which means that you can afford what's available, and then whatever you need should be available and accessible to you, right? So that led to the formation of our vision statement, which is, 1mg is an integrated healthcare platform, which aims to make healthcare understandable, affordable, and accessible, right? And this is back in 2014, um, when really, consumer customer centric healthcare was not anyone's top of mind. When integrated care, today everyone talks about integrated care and end to end care, right? But back in 2013, 2014, when we were starting to put this together, I don't think anyone believed in that. So I actually first challenge came in 2014 itself when we created this company, because uh, no matter who we spoke with, we would get one or two or three sort of categories of feedback. One was that it's very hard. You guys are smart. Why don't do something easier, right? So something easier would be e-pharmacy chala lo. Something easier would be self diagnostics kar lo. Is a why do integrated stuff? And doing one thing is hard. But I think this is where maybe we were just foolhardy, where we felt ki for if you are to do entrepreneurship, you have to attempt things which are hard rather than things which are simple, right? Because if you can crack hard things, then you actually naturally build a strong moat over time, because hard things are hard to do. And this has actually turned out to be really true for 1mg, because um, when we entered the market, there were competitors who were much better funded than 1mg, right? Much better funded, much better known, much more in the eye of the media, right? Compared to a lot of other healthcare startups, we are generally low key, low profile, don't talk about ourselves too much outside, don't do a lot of PR, etc. But over the years, we have emerged to be, let's say, one of the most, if not the most successful healthcare startup in this country, right? And a lot of that has happened because we have just stayed too true to our vision, right? A lot of startups today talk about integrated care, but they don't address or attempt integrated care kind of like we do, right? Every time we have conversations internally, like the integrated DNA is so built into our DNA that everything that we build has to sort of bring elements of healthcare together, right? So that was the first like challenge that we faced, where I don't think most people believed that that integrated could be built. They felt it was a really hard problem. Most people had better ideas with what we should build, which is e-pharmacy, e-diagnostics, etc. But we were very clear that it needed to be done a certain way, and we were very, I don't know, foolhardy, but in hindsight, maybe prescient that it needs to be done. I think the second sort of both opportunity and challenge for our journey was bringing these services together. So when we started, when we demerged, we already had a really small e-pharmacy component, and it actually came. A lot of our services came very organically, right? So our initial in 2012, 2013, our goal was just to be a content platform, but then consumers would come to us and give us one-star feedback and say, "Hey, you're giving me content. Why don't you sell medicines to us as well?" Right? And and we would scratch our heads that India has 1 million pharmacies, probably more pharmacies than any other country on this planet. And we're like, why do people want us to sell medicines? You can walk anywhere and get medicines. And that led to the second insight, and we are very fortunate that it was such a strong product market fit, that for a chronic patient, India has one of the highest populations of chronic patients in the world, diabetes, cardiovascular, etc. That when they go to a pharmacy, typically they only get only 60 to 70% of their prescription filled, right? A lot of there's usually a 20, 30, 35% bounce, right? And this creates, for someone who is, let's say, on a monthly medication cycle, this actually creates a lot of challenges in keeping their medicines fulfilled, right? A lot of times brands are switched, etc. And for customers, this was a real hassle. So, so that led to the launch of e-pharmacy. Diagnostics creation was very, I would say, fortuitous, because between Prashant and I, we've always had this sort of active and healthy tension that he wants to do everything, and then I push back and I say, no, we should do a few things and do them well, right? And we found a balance over the years where when I push back, then he goes away, but he keeps convincing me. And then even when I push back, I go away and keep doing my research to understand, what is he actually trying to achieve. And so Prashant had been pushing me to do that. We need to do diagnostics. The time is right. And I was like, look, we are just starting to figure out how to scale pharmacy. Let's just focus on it a little more. And then somehow I met the startup who was doing diagnostics, and that motivated us to do diagnostics as well. That if they could do it, that why couldn't we? So I came back to the office. I said, hey, I'm convinced we should do diagnostics. We set ourselves a 1 month goal to actually launch a diagnostic service. In 1 month, we got the whole application. So we were three co-founders at the time, Prashant, Vikas, and I. Prashant took over the business. I took over all the tech. Vikas took over all the partnerships and everything. So in a month, we got partners, we got technology, we got a basic business plan going, and we basically started our diagnostic service in a month's time, maybe 6 weeks time. And then similarly, one fine day we said, we have two legs, let's build the third leg. So we built the e-commerce, the e-consultation platform as well, right? So that in the first year itself, we had a fairly rounded out platform. There were two or three, I would say, core defining moments or struggles that have come, at least in my part of the 1MG journey, right? And regulatory, of course, is one which, Prashant's sort of navigated very, very patiently and very adeptly. And a lot of it has just evolved around educating the ecosystem that there's real value here for consumers to be had, and putting consumer at the center. But from my vantage point, there were two or three core challenges that we faced, right? The first was that, even though 1MG used to deliver a lot of services, right? Pharmacy to patients and diagnostics, we always, because we are all digital savvy, digital consumer product people, we always focused a lot on the digital product experience, the app experience, the order booking experience, the look and feel, the design. And we felt that supply chain is actually par for course, right? That we can let's say do a marketplace, we can let's say we can do a marketplace and it will be good enough. It took us 2 to 3 years to realize that I was wrong, we were wrong, and supply chain is just incredibly, incredibly hard. And to actually deliver high quality experience to a customer, there's no way that you can do it without owning your own supply chain, right? And a lot of it is also because, I'm talking like 2015, 16, when supply chain in India, and still is, very, very nascent, right? We have very broken supply chains, no supply chain. So you cannot go to a supply chain provider and say that, hey, I want this quality of service. I'm willing to pay this much. Can you build a service for me, right? There's just no such thing that existed back then, right? So that was the first big transition for us, where we went from a marketplace model to increasingly like controlled supply chain model. We used to have our own sort of large pharmacies, large warehouses, which would fulfill orders. And that significantly improved the quality experience that we had. And then the next step we made was we also said we will build our own supply chain software, right? And funnily enough, even though I used to lead technology strategy, I was the one who was dead against it, right? And the thought process was that there should be someone who has solved supply chain, because again, we were in this mode where supply chain is a solved problem. We shouldn't solve it, and we should solve the customer experience, maybe more importantly. But then we realized that the the supply chain ecosystem is so nascent that we had to build it ourselves. So today, for instance, what that has done is that the NPS for our services, which is what we track how customers love or hate our services, is above 65. So 65 for pharmacy, 75 for diagnostics. Comparatively, Apple NPS is around 80, right? And Amazon NPS is around the same level as well, right? So this investment in supply chain got us to a point where today, if a customer orders on 1mg, then especially if they have been working with us for a little bit, there's a guarantee that your order will arrive in the time that we promise that it will arrive for you, right? So that was one big change where we actually understood that we are a supply chain company and not just a digital health company, and there was significant not just bits and bytes but atoms that were getting moved, and we built that expertise to move those atoms. I think the second big change happened in around 2018 when we were struggling for growth. So 1mg grew like phenomenally well in the early years, 2015 to 18, maybe 100, 150% growth year on year. And came 2018 where the competition really heated up. We didn't know what was going on, and our growth became very tepid, maybe, trickled down to 5% quarter on quarter. And, startups, when they don't grow, especially commerce startups, when they don't grow, then it's basically almost like a death for you, right? You become irrelevant. And that was the second big transition for us. So a really painful time. It forced us to actually go back and actually become growth experts in a way, right? So we restructured the whole company, the model, the organization, to understand how does growth get delivered for our company. And what it also did was it also forced us to think about how will 1mg as a business grow, right? So we started out as a B2C, and then we said that for 1mg, our intent now is to make sure that anywhere in the ecosystem where a healthcare service is needed by consumers or needs to be delivered by a stakeholder, right? 1mg essentially becomes that rail for healthcare service delivery, right? And that started like the partnerships initiative, where we started to work with insurance providers, started to work with hospitals, and we said that at-home healthcare, right, means 1mg, and you can use the infrastructure that we have built, both technology and the physical infrastructure, to actually deliver better quality care to your consumers, right? So that was a second big transition. And then I would say that the third big transition is something that we are going through today, right? Where we are saying that how do we solve massively hard problems, right? Like, how do we make sure that the number of consumers who have access to healthcare through someone like a 1mg increases tenfold and not twofold? And the second is that how do we use all the consumer healthcare data that we have with us, right? Because we have all digitized data, right? How do we deliver core healthcare insights to consumers and actually get them to better outcomes, right? So one secret goal that we have is how do we use technology and 1mg services to actually improve patient outcomes, right? But the challenge is that there's not a lot of research on using, at least not a lot of research that we've seen on how do you improve patient outcomes. It requires a lot of adherence, it requires a lot of insights, a lot of financial incentives, etc. And so how do we as a company figure that out, right? So that's in a nutshell. I'm skipped over a lot of portions, but that's in a nutshell what our journey has been.